So let's just jump now to the first question, Mr. Kameel. So you were born to a Kurdish family in 1972 in Iranian Kurdistan.
That's correct,
Kurdistan,
yes.
that's correct. And what does it mean to be a Kurd? Because I know that in anthropology we study so much about this Kurdish culture, so unique. What is so unique about you guys?
Right. Well, I mean, the question how would it feel to be Kurdish is the same as you ask, I don't know, anyone how would it feel to be to feel Spanish or Italian or whatever. I think it's a collective of the cultural elements, music, food, customary, everything that you lived and grew up, right? So for me, being Kurdish, it is all of this, which I don't think there is any difference between me and the other individuals in the world. But then there are certain differences within the cultures that's may differentiate and make it different. I think for the being a Kurd, it's more or less in today's world. Or at least in a political sense, this is how we come across. It is an area, region which is troublesome. There is plenty of problems there. The Kurds had a bloody sort of like a history, a rough background, a resistance and being resilient. And then of course this is the outcome of what has been going on throughout of the centuries. So I guess that's how it is. But leaving the dark side of it, of course, like any other cultures, there are beautiful stuff and nice music, food, hospitality, and more or less a virgin, not known territory to the rest of the world because of the reason I've explained, which maybe makes it unique when the peace come back to this region, or at least there would be some sort of a general stability. Yes, I mean there is no a political unified state called Kurdistan. Yes, there is a vast area geographically, which mainly divided between Iraq, Iran, today in today's Turkey and Syria. So the Kurdish inhabitants live in this four countries, and including other countries like some former Soviet Union, Azerbaijan or Armenia and all that. But then the only one close to a sort of like a semi-independent, somehow semi-recognized Kurdistan nowadays is south of Kurdistan, which we call it, and this is known as the Kurdish Regional Government. It's part of northern Iraq, geographically speaking. Apart from this, the areas of where the Kurds live in Turkey, which is the largest parts of Kurdistan, is based in Turkey. The second would be Iran, the third would be Iraq, and the fourth would be Syria. And then why is that? Because after the First World War, when the British, the French, and the world powers, after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, came around to the Middle East and start dividing and chopping like the countries, making them sort of like states. The Kurds did not have a representative, and then he was obviously blocked by the Turkish at the time, the Turkish government at the time, and of course there was opposition from the Iranian side. And even though they were promised a land in this sort of like area should have been called Kurdistan as a country, because since then they have been divided, and each part of Kurdistan has its own difficulty problem with the central government. Well, to go back a little bit, like to go back as to why all of this happened. Well, I was living in England, working elsewhere, and in different parts of the world. Um, I went back to the region in the Middle East. I was working in Turkish Kurdistan for some 3.5 years. Then I crossed over back to Iran, where my family live, and this is where I was born. And basically, I stayed on because the family needed me at the time. But then I found my way, realizing this is a very unique place anthropologically, scientifically, to carry out and to do some social science-based project. So I did some work on female genital mutilation and cutting. I did work on child marriage. I put together a team which we kind of concentrated on temporary marriage, all the sort of like a harmless traditional practices, as we call it. So that it basically didn't go well with the government, especially the issue of child marriage. This was a kind of a red line for the government at the time in Iran, where they were trying to advertise early marriages, and basically pop up the population, the young population, as they thought it is an aging population in Iran, and they need more marriages and more children conceived. So that particular research, which was basically underlining a large number of boys and girls getting married, especially girls under age of 18 and below age of 16. It came to the attention of the media, the Western world. They went into to the UN annual reporting, and so on and so forth. And of course, I also did some a sort of like lobbying and advertising, and on sort of like discussing the issue further, and that basically caused some tension between basically the government and myself, or the people who were kind of supporting, and then it led to my arrest. And of course, it wasn't just straightforward. Was like opposed to what I was doing. There was different news articles. There were all sorts of tweets, and so the preparation was there. And then when I was invited to a UN African-led conference in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, on the way coming back to Iran, in Tehran, I was picked up, arrested, and I was taken to the security establishment in Evin prison in Tehran, in the capital. And yeah, so the rest is, it's almost like a history. But then yeah, I spent like almost over 110 days in solitary confinement, and then the general ward in prison. It was a long procedure by the time that I got sentenced in the revolutionary court in Iran to 9 years and 3 months, a very hefty sort of like fine. And while I was on bail, and sort of like find a way in order to escape from Iran through Iraqi Kurdistan and came back to England, and I'm here since. But then in their eyes, what I was doing, it was a direct threat to some of the policies where they had about boosting the population. And then, of course, in addition to the child marriage, they're also opposed to the work I did on LGBT and temporary marriage. FGM wasn't so much of a big concern, although they tried to put this in the top of the agenda because I received some funding for that, and all of that was put into one huge sort of like a scenario, and this is one of the accusation I was trying to topple in the regime by doing scientific research, which to anyone is just a laugh, but then. And along with other 16 charges that was brought on me, they went through my sort of like emails, communication. My emails and accounts were hacked prior to my arrest one or two times. Then they went through my phone communication, digged it up years and years through my personal, private life and professional life, and then all of that led to whatever they cooked, and at the end, it was just a court hearing, which was just a shamble basically. They Child marriage is a concept which is basically a marriage. And what is the difference? What the terms determine the terminology of child marriage would differentiate between adult marriage to a child marriage is the age. It's basically internationally the age of consent, the age of adulthood. It's universally known as being 18. With the exception, of course, that's in many countries, that age is actually lower than 18. It's 16. There are a number of states in the United States. Actually, while I was doing the research, I was to find out that there are many states within the United States that allows a marriage under age of 18 and like 16 or below, I think, in special circumstances with the permission of the court and the guardian and so on. And that actually applies to some other European countries, like the Western world. So it is not something that is only belong to certain country and it doesn't to the other. What the difference between the way the child marriage is performed in, for example, in Iran or Islamic countries or religious countries, which are ideologically it's run, it is the way it's done, and this is where the children don't have the say, or the family do decide for them, or the way the marriages happen. Mainly the partners are much older, or then they are marrying into at the sort of like families where they have already there is a first wife and the second wife and so on. So these are the elements of the difference. But then, regardless of all of this, marriage, a child marriage in Iran, it is embedded within the law. And this is where the problem lies, because the law actually allows it, because the family and the society it's basically prefer it. Anthropologically speaking, and this may not go well in certain ways with sort of like the human rights and the new legislation in the modern world. If you look at it, you would see that it was only 40-50 years ago, most majority of the marriages were actually not age consent. It was all below age of 18. It could have happened anytime between an age of puberty, which is 12 or 13 upward. So it is not something that is really has a long history within the civilization that we live in. Majority of the marriages did happen early because the life expectancy, as we know, it was very short, and it was just part of the culture and tradition. And this is it stayed. It was resisted still to this day in certain countries for different reasons. The society formation is different. The level of sensitivity around sort of like engaging between the two sexes of men and women are different. They are not allowed. There is tabooistic issues about it. The concept of sex is very private. And of course, there is a religious barriers and then a cultural customary to it. For example, when I was researching, and I'm a fieldwork researcher, I don't do just for the sake of sort of like a library
Yeah.
research or as armchair anthropologist, as we call it. So, for example, in a number of interviews what I had with people, especially in child marriages, it's mainly happens and prevails in the rural areas, like the villages, rather than within that fabric of society. So, in certain interviews, what I had, I was talking to the family as to why did you marry off your girl at the age of 13, or why did you choose a wife for your son, like at the age of 16 or 15. And they were saying something really interesting. It struck me, and then it made me to even kind of think twice about it. And they were saying that, look, this is what it was, what it is. For as long as we remember, generation after generation, here people do marry early. And if we don't find the right candidate for our children, by the age when they get to the age of 16 or 17 or 18, there would be no one left because everybody just got married. And then it would be really difficult for us to find the right candidate for our children. So what we do is we prepare for this in the early age. So we choose the like within the family, the tribe, or the village, or the next village. So we find someone, or we kind of a plan ahead in order so they would get the right customer in the right time. And if you really put yourself on that concept, on that particular village, like that parents, what they say, it actually makes sense because obviously there is no other alternative what they have, and every parents would do think about the future and so on. And of course you have to talk about all the limitation and poverty and lack of education and all the rest of it. And of course politically that's all go back to the central government, and that they have not actually given a fair share to these people to raise up to that level. That's another concept. I think that okay, there's also right and wrong about that statement. Um, I did research on LGBT, not T actually, LGB community in Iran called Forbidden City, and it took me about 2.5 years to conduct this research with of course with a team of fieldwork staff. We interviewed a large number of people who were part of this community. Um, and of course, I had to dig up the literature, the history, and the background of the LGBT community in Iran. Like any other society, they do exist. Of course, they are. In fact, they are sort of like not so much shy or hidden away. There are different or known places, especially in the larger cities like Tehran, or parks that these people do gather, even though sometimes they get dispersed by the police and so on. And of course nowadays the younger generation of this group, they do operate within the social media, and then they have their own Telegram groups and so on and so forth. The Iranian Revolution happened 47 years ago. We have to divide that. So the first 10 or 15 years, it was really a huge crackdown of all sorts of like social freedom, hijab. There was a morality police, much sort of like heavy-handed and worse than what we saw in the last 10 or 20 years. At that time, there are certain reports which does indicate there are people who may be gay, not lesbians, who have been arrested. They were charged and convicted, and there are some evidence that there has been an execution. There's also a question marks about the ethnicity and originality of these statements, but there are some at the beginning of the revolution, or at least we know that there has been large number of people been flagged in the middle of the cities, where people gathered and watched them. There has been raids in places where these people were gathered, or they were being reported to the police and so on. We see less and less of this in the recent years, because of obvious reason. The rise of the population, the Iranian society is resisting. I mean, there is all sort of a way of technology. There's a city life which is almost kind of impossible to monitor all these people to come and go and associate with one another. So yeah, I mean, like currently I haven't seen any of concrete evidence of execution as per execution. Every now and then there is sort of like a small or big group of gay, lesbian, or trans kind of a mixed parties where police raids them. They arrest them, they give them a hard time, maybe they charge them with certain offenses of drinking alcohol or drug-related issues and so on, but it doesn't get to execution, luckily. The main part of the skeleton of Iranian law is actually mainly is a French. It's French and Belgium. It was copied down from the law which was kind of imported during the Shah, during the previous regime. And although that heavily been redacted, been edited, influenced by the Sharia law, by the Islamic law, but there's an interesting mix of the Western and Eastern sort of like and religiously dominated passages within the textbook that you would see, the law textbooks in Iran, which amazes you, because when you read it, you would immediately spot there are some part of the law is very advanced, and sometimes it doesn't even fit with the fabric of the society, and the rest is it's kind of ideologically influenced, and basis of a Sharia law. It's there. You would see that that's certain punishments actually passed on, because there are, and it's been backed up by the verses of Quran and the religious textbooks and so on, and so it's an interesting mix actually. Sharia law, well, it's a law which basically translate Quran and all the related Islamic textbooks into a law which governs a country or society. We don't have a Sharia law per se in Iran, but yeah, as I said, the law of the law is heavily influenced by religion. We do have much stricter Sharia law. In fact, in certain countries which are neighboring to Iran, or in some sort of like newly constituted sort of like Islamic countries in Africa. But Iranian law, I think although it's in certain ways is backward or doesn't fit the today's today's expectation from Iran at all. As somebody who's not a politician, I don't know how much to say about this. Apart from what I can say is the current war between Iran and America. I would see it this way. I don't see there is so much of a really a war between Iran and America head on per se. This is a war between Israel and Iran. Uh, 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 America is used by its sort of like firepower and the advanced military equipments it has, and Israel is manipulating President Trump's and his administration quite cleverly for its own gain. This is a war would have happened between Iran and Israel, which it did happen for like 12 days, few months before that, this war, if you remember. And I'm sure that will not be the end of this war, even that if this current peace prevails. There's going to be more clashes and more wars on the way, because this is what the aims and objectives of Iran and Israel is. To many disbelief, and I've been saying this and been criticized for it also, I don't really, I see there are differences between Israel and Iran as two political systems. But also I see a very strong similarity between them, because both countries are ruthless. Both countries are very ideologically sort of like dominated by religion. They are fundamental and radical when it comes to a way of conducting their aspiration and their needs. And at the same time, they are they have much bigger dream. Like Iran is after creating this sort of like a Shia Islamic state which goes beyond its borders and try to import the slogan of revolution, which is really outdated, but they still, this is what they try to do for the 47 years at the expense of the Iranian people. At the same time, Israel believe that they are entitled to a much greater territory rights in the Middle East, because of what the backbone of what they believe, what they translate, where the Judaism come from, which I don't think it is. So we deal with two countries, and nowadays we have Turkey also with the same sort of aspiration in a way. That's why I suspect there would be more clashes. I don't think Mr. Trump is a clever politician. He can be maybe a good businessman. That also to be questioned as to what he's done with his money. Did he actually make any more money in the last 10 or 15 years than what he did? But it seems to be very unreliable on what he say. He say one thing, he does the other. He's heavily influenced by certain individuals within his circle, family, and of course Israel, and of course to many Mr. Trump's represents a religious and a radical and somehow far right type of a society within America. We know, and I've been to America. I've seen America kind of divided between two sort of like camps of conservative and Democrats, and this is what I believe it is. My advice, I'm not in a position to advise, especially people like Trump and the Iranian They're all these crazy people. They only think about their gain and nothing about people. The result of every war, it is the killing of civilians, and you could see what happens in Gaza, in Israel, in Lebanon, in Iran, and elsewhere. The real price is where the people pay. And nowadays, with a war like this, which is doesn't have really a clear plan as to what they try to achieve, it is goes far beyond America and Iran and Israel. It's now everybody's paying for it because the world economy, and of course, many thousands of people get killed, and it just goes like unanswered. The message is peace. There is every war, it will end up in peace and negotiation, and this is pretty much what's happening now. But I think it is just like we live in an era, and certain countries that are governed by certain people which do create more harm than any good, and I think the evidence is there, unfortunately.